Good morning. I'm Kenneth Adams, president of LaGuardia Community College, and welcome to my fall report for 2021. Let's start with enrollment, as we should, and I'll share some good news against what is a relatively weak backdrop. Here at LaGuardia, as you have heard me say, we've had declining enrollment for several years. This has been a troubling trend that started long before COVID. But the pandemic has made it much worse. Over the past 2 years, since the fall of 2019, we have lost a quarter of our students. But I think the worst is over. We're working hard to rebuild LaGuardia's enrollment, and yes, we can do it. Let's take a look. This slide shows the trends in our headcount enrollment over the last 3 years. And as you'll see, there's a gray bar on the far right. That's that number, 12,500. That's the goal for the spring semester enrollment. That's where we begin to pick things up again as we move ahead. Spring 19, fall 19, spring 21. During those 3 semesters, unfortunately, many of our LaGuardia students hard hit by the pandemic weren't able to pay their full CUNY bills, and they developed this debt. So here's where we are today. Thanks to CUNY Comeback, 4,600, almost 4,700 of our LaGuardia students who had these prior balances had them reduced, in many cases to zero. The total cost of that, or the amount of funding used to pay down the balances, $6.6 million. Now, in some cases, if a student had a balance, right, an unpaid bill from before that first COVID semester, that's a problem because this program did not affect any prior balances or any balances that might have occurred since. The situation here is truly unfortunate, and it's a reminder. I spent a minute on this just to say, so important that we don't let our students have unpaid balances or accrue CUNY debt in this way. Because many of these students are gone. Let's face it, they have left the system. They've left LaGuardia. But that debt does not leave them. Because first they owe the money to CUNY, to LaGuardia, I should say. If we can't collect an unpaid balance from a student, it goes to a collection agency. If the collection agency doesn't collect it, and when they do, by the way, they charge a big interest fee, but if they can't collect it, it becomes a lien payable to the city of New York. Remember, we are in part a city agency, a city organization. So these 9,000 students, many of them now owe thousands of dollars to the city of New York. They may not realize that, but they will if they ever try to get a city job or do any other business with the city where this red flag of unpaid CUNY debt comes up. It's a very unfortunate situation, and again, we've got to do everything we can to not let students get to that point. Let's talk about what really matters in our classrooms and for our students teaching and learning. I've been able, mostly through Zoom of course, to spend some time with faculty during my first year here at LaGuardia and to learn about, as much as, I'm not in the classroom, so I'm kind of curious to know this. What is it like to be teaching at LaGuardia during COVID? So what are some of the things that I've heard from you all? Clearly remote can be hard, and it sometimes can be almost impossibly difficult. There's sometimes some sadness and frustration, anger, lots of emotions for many of you when the students are not visible, if they don't turn their Zoom screen on. I know how hard that is. Or they're just not participating, and you're not able to engage them as you would in a normal classroom. And on the other side, we also hear about technical and logistical challenges experienced by students. It makes it hard for them too, and that kind of makes the whole thing doubly complicated. Of course, necessity being the mother of invention, LaGuardia faculty have adapted in countless creative ways. This is the positive part of this. You figure this out, and when it's worked well for you and for your students, we just need to learn from you so we can build on those best practices for classes and programs that, let's face it, moving on, we're going to want to keep online. When online really, or remote, is really the most effective way for certain classes and certain students. Let me mention now our plans for spring 22. Now, as you've heard, our plan is to return to campus in January with just a small number of hybrid or remote classes selected for those modalities at the departmental level. And let's face it, we've got to get back to campus. It's fundamental for our students' success. But it's also important for this institution. We were not set up to be an online college. Think of this fall, the semester we're in now then, as a transitional semester, or as I like to say, our last COVID semester. Let it be the last time LaGuardia was an almost completely online community college. Think about that. It's an oxymoron. I also wanted to mention this morning a really important challenge for LaGuardia, by the way, one shared with all of the community colleges in CUNY, which is the need to strengthen our AAS degree programs. Back in the spring, CUNY Chancellor Felix Matos Rodriguez secured the pro bono services of Bain & Company, the global management consulting firm, and he asked Bain to assign experts from its education practice. He got them, again, this is all for free, pro bono, to do an important challenge. He wanted to look at something that's critical for CUNY community colleges, how to strengthen AAS degree programs. Now, the work is needed because, as many of you know, AAS degrees, a unique credential offered by community colleges, are supposed to lead graduates directly to gainful employment. And unfortunately, often they don't. They turn out to be a broken promise. And this has been happening more recently in the rapidly changing New York City economy. Employers decide that a job for which an associate degree used to be a sufficient credential, that job now demands the knowledge and competencies of a bachelor's degree. And they don't tell us. You see what happens? Our program becomes out of date and disconnected from the labor market. Whatever the case, AAS degrees need intense ongoing maintenance in collaboration, close collaboration with industry partners. What's the sobering takeaway of this research? As a standalone credential, most 60-credit associate degrees have little or no value in the New York City labor market. They won't help our students get a living wage job. Other than for a limited number of fields such as healthcare, as I mentioned, their value is as a credential to help a student transfer into a bachelor's degree program at a senior college. And we know that. But it reminds us that there are two successful outcomes at a place like LaGuardia. Successful transfer to a baccalaureate program and then attaining the BA or BS degree. Or an AAS program with really strong industry partners that does lead straight away to a living wage job, for example, in nursing, healthcare, vet tech, some of the fields that I mentioned. But we've got 17 AAS programs at LaGuardia, so we've got a lot of work to do to make sure. In prior talks, you've heard me mention my interest in the mission of LaGuardia as a Hispanic serving institution. LaGuardia's student body is 48% Hispanic, almost double the national threshold. We're the second largest HSI, Hispanic serving institution, in all of New York State, second only to, yes, BMCC in Lower Manhattan. Incredibly, LaGuardia is home to students from 22 of the 23 nations of Latin America. As I have said previously, I believe we need to do more to bring our identity as a Hispanic serving institution to life, to give greater meaning to this critical feature of LaGuardia. So to this end, I propose that we create a new university center, the Latin American Heritage Center at LaGuardia Community College, or Herencia Latina. Notice I don't call it a research center, because it will be broader than that, and it will include arts and cultural programming, guest lectures, academic events, community outreach and support, partnerships of all types, and of course, cutting-edge faculty research. The slide, I know a topic here is addressing the needs of adjunct faculty. We're dependent on adjuncts. They're a majority of our faculty. I want the best adjuncts in CUNY to want to work at LaGuardia, and so we've got to treat them better. Here's a different topic, and it's this question of why the humanities matter. LaGuardia is unique in the number and quality of our humanities programs, and we actually face some challenges with respect to humanities at LaGuardia that are challenges typically faced at senior colleges and in graduate schools with graduate humanities programs, which are broader national discussions about the role of humanities education in higher education. Again, not often do you have this discussion at the community college level, to be frank with you, but we have to have it here at LaGuardia because of the richness of our humanities programs and their breadth and their history. For those of you worried that I'm going to make arc welding a graduation requirement at LaGuardia, you can relax. It's not going to happen. In the end, I'm a humanist. And as I see it, an important part of my job at LaGuardia is to be a champion of the humanities. Yes, an advocate for liberal arts education here at this community college. Consider these words of Robert Newman, who's the president and director of the National Humanities Center. Newman says, the humanities investigate common questions like what it means to be human, what constitutes a good life, how we know the truth, and how we preserve democracy. We can deepen these questions beyond abstractions by applying them in service to solving our society's most vexing, tangible concerns. To promote humanities in a community college is not inconsistent with promoting career programs or being a leader in STEM, as LaGuardia is. No, the challenge is to promote all 4 areas of study: business, healthcare, liberal arts, and STEM. That was alphabetical. To promote them all in a balanced way that's clear and helpful to our students. A community college like LaGuardia that offers more than 50 degree programs to students who are often foreign-born and or first-generation college-goers has a special obligation to help those students make thoughtful choices about their majors. Think about it this way. LaGuardia freshmen have more choices in terms of majors, right, than first-year students at Harvard. So this puts an extra burden on our student advisors and others who are helping students make those choices about majors. And I look forward to continuing this discussion with many of you in the weeks and months ahead. Let's move on to some issues related to our students' success. We've had a really good upward trend in our 3-year completion rate for first-time, full-time freshmen, which is the benchmark for 1,200 community colleges around the country around completion. You see how we went from fall 2013 to 22% for the most recent cohort. Those students that started as freshmen in 2017, well, 32.2% of them completed and were part of the 3,000 students to which we gave associate degrees on June 17th earlier this spring at graduation. That 32.2% rate is a very important achievement. Interesting to see that it dips in our projection for the next cohort, and that change was made after thoughtful consideration to consider what we anticipate will be the effects of COVID. Retention is also critically important, big marker of long-term student success. So again, at 63% for our most recent cohort is pretty good. Our goal remains high, 68%. As I said earlier, with respect to all of our students except those, and it's about 25%, that are in AAS degree programs for which we have to guarantee good workforce outcomes. For everybody else, we have to guarantee good transfer outcomes. LaGuardia has a good track record in this regard. Again, over 70% of our graduates transferring within 2 years. Most of you are familiar with the Aspen Prize Community College Excellence. It's awarded every 2 years. Let's take a look at the Aspen Prize winners, right? This is the Aspen Institute's judgment of the most effective, and it's a series of important benchmarks, community colleges in the country. If you look at this chart, U.S. average, 30%. All right, nothing to write home about, my friends. 1,200 community colleges in the U.S., average 3-year completion rate, 30%. LaGuardia, slightly above the average at 32%. That means we're average, okay? We've got work to do. We should aim high here, my friends. We should really try to boost our completion rate and to get into this set of schools that are at 40, 50% completion rate to really be a national player or be a star on the national scene, which is certainly what I would hope for LaGuardia. We are rethinking, yet again, advising at LaGuardia. And I know this is both a sensitive subject and one that's had a lot of attention over the years, but we've got, coming out of COVID, a chance to really rethink the balance between faculty advising, staff advising, how advising is managed, how it's organized. And I've sort of called for a timeout. You can blame this on me, because I really want to learn from best practices at other community colleges around the country. You'll notice I like to benchmark LaGuardia to them, but I also want to learn from them. Let me move on to this question of career services, CCPD, career counseling, professional development. The problem is not enough of our students are making thoughtful choices about their majors with a career in mind. We need our students to be thinking about a career as they make their choices. The other thing is as students transition through LaGuardia, like at all community colleges, there's a desperate need for internships. I'm going to try to get the foundation to help with this. We've got to offer our LaGuardia students paid internships, and many, many more of them in all sorts of fields related to the majors of our students. Guided Pathways is an organizing framework, a strategy for enhancing community college performance. I am fascinated by guided pathways. And I really do believe LaGuardia already has a number of the elements of guided pathways strategies, but they're not fully developed. And sometimes, because we can be siloed here, they're separated around the college and not fully integrated. So I'm just flagging it today, but more on this later. Good news here regarding enrollment. When the pandemic hit, because so many of our ACE programs, we call them fee-based, students have to pay tuition out of their pocket. There's no financial aid for ACE. So we took a huge enrollment hit because people couldn't afford to come get job training. They couldn't afford to come take English as a second language in the TELC. But things are starting to get better, and students are coming back. Much of this recovery, if you will, in ACE, adult and continuing education, would not happen if we weren't helping low-wage Queens residents with scholarships. LaGuardia Foundation Board in December authorized something no other community college has, not in New York City, and I haven't found one yet in the country. Private philanthropy funding scholarships for non-credit workforce students. Current fiscal year, we've already projected out and allocated, this process. Close to 1,000 of these scholarships will be given out by June 22nd. That's 1,000 people who will have come to LaGuardia by this coming June to learn a new skill, get an industry certification, and get a living wage job and get back on their feet. Our LaGuardia Foundation historically would raise about $3 million a year. Look at the number at the bottom of this slide, $4.5 million already just in September. And we got a long way to go before June 30th when it comes to raising money. So we're on a very good trajectory. Now remember, this is part of our big fundraising campaign, which we call Tomorrow, the campaign to help our students and city rise and recover. Our goal, again, raise $15 million to help our students. I want to mention, before I tell you about the merit scholarships, a number of things distinguish LaGuardia from other community colleges, and our foundation is among them. Just take a moment. Our foundation, under the leadership of Board Chair Susie Scanlon-Rabinowitz, functions like the fundraising arm of a large four-year school. Trust me, I've never seen a foundation at this level in a community college. Our foundation, they just punch well above their weight. And the result are all the new and important things we have been able to do for LaGuardia students during this pandemic. I assure you, we are doing things thanks to the foundation that no other community college in CUNY is doing for our students during COVID. Particularly those ACE scholarships I mentioned and the new LaGuardia Merit Scholarships. Let's take a quick look. The Merit Scholarship is a $500 reward to a student with financial need and strong academic performance. And it's that $500 for books, Metro cards, food, last dollar financial aid. Really, really, really important. Average GPA, all of these students, 3.3. Again, these are high-performing students. And 78 of them that receive the award for continuing students will be graduating this fall semester. Over on the grant side, just quickly review some of the grants, just some of the many important grants we've been able to secure to advance work here at LaGuardia. There's a list by program, by the funding source uses. These are all most of these are government grants, with the exception of the great $2 million contribution we just got from Goldman Sachs. Look at all the great neighborhoods of Queens from which our students come. And again, ask ourselves, what are we doing to serve this borough? One of the answers to this is becoming more and more clear to me, and it's just really good stuff. All the work that we do in small business assistance and entrepreneurship support at our Small Businesses Service Center. And these are 5 different programs. Some of them here for many years in various ways. They're helping, for the most part, women and minority-owned small businesses, startups, entrepreneurs, immigrants, people who are trying to get on their feet by starting their own business or growing a business that they have. Well, they come to us, to our colleagues, for help in low-cost financing, access to capital, HR technical assistance, procurement assistance, scoring big government contracts, for example, through our PTAC. These are very sophisticated small business assistance programs run by our colleagues. This is yet another really unique feature of LaGuardia. We've been helping thousands and thousands of businesses and entrepreneurs through the years. And right now, as we emerge from COVID, this work is intensifying and the team is just doing a great job. Another thing we do that's really important as we serve the borough are our pre-college programs. English as a second language instruction, our ESL work, so much of our high school equivalency. We used to call it GED. The task is what it's called, the new test. But getting ready people for the next stage in their educational journey, that's the work of our pre-college programs, all kinds of great services to Queens through these programs. Thanks for your time and attention. Thanks for all you do for LaGuardia and for our students.